Hey everybody, you're watching Cadroll Hunter, and I am super excited. I had the opportunity to purchase this huge coin collection you see right in front of you now. There is silver, we've got quarters and dimes, there's dollars and 50-cent pieces. We've got tons of old nickels, tons of old pennies, all sorts of crazy goodies here. I am so excited to get into this collection with you. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel Cadroll Hunter. A little over a week ago, a viewer of my channel reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in buying his late father's coin collection. They were going through his mom's house, looking through, they found all of this stuff here. And what they really wanted was to make sure that this went to a good home. And he'd been watching my videos. He was really interested. He's a collector. Tristan is the one who contacted me. He's a collector, but he's more into hockey cards, not necessarily coins. And he liked my content. He saw I was pretty enthusiastic and excited about coins. He wanted to know if I purchased collections. I've really only done that a couple of times from an individual. Most of the time I get lots from that come from estate sales from an antique dealer that I frequent. So this would be something a little bit different. So last weekend we sat down, we had a look at what was in the collection. We tried to figure out what a fair price was, looking at things like the value of silver, just sort of the volume of things that was here. And I think we worked out a really great deal for me and a great deal for him. And so with his permission, I'm going to film this. And he thought this would be a pretty good legacy for his dad's collection. And I'm really excited to share a bit of their story in this video. As we look through this stuff, it's just really, really exciting. Now, there is tons of stuff here, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of this in one video. I think just going through this bucket of pennies might be a video all on its own. We got all sorts of buckets of pennies. There's wheat cents, there's oldies, tons of stuff. So I think what we're going to do is really just start with the dimes and the quarters. So we got the silver stuff here, maybe the silver dollars as well. And I'm just so excited about getting into this stuff. We're just going to have to parcel it out. If I tried to go through everything, I think that's going to be a pretty long video. So why don't we get started, I think, first with these quarters and dimes. So the collection itself is really interesting. You see there's a bunch of coins that are in flips. There's a bunch of loose coins. I talked to Tristan to get a sense of what his dad was like as a collector. And you can see there's like old stuff. Here's a old 1914 5-cent piece. We call these fish scales. They're so small. And Tristan explained that his dad was more of a rummager in the way he collected. He had an interest in coins probably since he was a young man. He had worked at a bank when he was young, as did his father. They lived in Montreal. And essentially what Tristan said would happen, his memory of his dad and coins is that every time he had change, when he went to the store, went to the bank or anything like that, he would always put it in the palm of his hand and kind of look through it. And if there was anything interesting, he would throw it in a bucket or a jar or a container. And that's really what this entire collection looked like. All these coins and flips here. This was actually an attempt, Tristan said, that he and his sister once with their dad just decided to try to organize things or have an event, a family day, to try to go through the collection. And so they did this. They put these, what they thought were the older coins, the ones that look more special, in these flips. And but it was really a one-off exercise. Tristan's dad really wasn't terribly keen on it. It wasn't something that was, it wasn't the way he collected. So this was sort of a one-day event, and he never did it again. And a lot of the way that the collection is organized today was really due to Tristan trying to organize the collection just to see what was in there when he contacted me. So I got a bunch of loose stuff. We'll look at that too. I see there is a quarter in here that looks like it's been shot. I mean, I don't know, some pretty significant force has been exerted on this coin. Oh my goodness, it looks like it took a bullet. I don't know. It's an oldie too. I don't think I can quite see the year. I'll have to like scope it, but it's King George the Sixth anyway, so probably in the 40s it looked like, and a bunch of other things. And not all of these are Canadian, I can see, so that's actually really cool. What we can see here is that everything is pretty circulated, so that really seems to align with what Tristan was telling me about his dad, is that this was pocket change. This wasn't buying a collection at a coin store. He was just interested in coins and probably set aside anything that he thought was old or interesting. When we look at the nickels and the dimes, or sorry, the nickels and the quarters, I think there's a lot of commemorative. So anything that stood out, looked different, that he was interested in, he would collect it. There's a lot of stuff here. I think what I'm going to do is try to organize these by years so that we can see what we've got here. I'm not sure if there's a full run. I don't know if there's any key dates. There are a couple dates that I talked to Tristan about beforehand, like in the silver dollars. If there was a 47 or a 48, like I'm not going to buy that cheap. Like we want to get a fair price on that. But I don't think there's anything in here necessarily. There's nothing high grade for sure that I can see, and probably no key dates. But we'll take a look and see if there's what is in here and if there's anything interesting or any surprises. So there are all of our dimes organized. But before we get there, we'll look at these. We got a few of these. These are the 5-cent pieces. We saw this one here from 1914. That is Hold. It's a tiny little thing. There's King George V on the obverse there with part of his crown clipped out. But these are tiny little things, and I mentioned they're called fish scales because they were so small. But this one here from 1914 would be sterling silver, so a bit higher purity than the rest of these, which would be 80%, with the exception of potentially the 1967. We'll talk about that in a bit. We've got here also a 1920, also King George V. And then the oldest one, it actually says 1899 on the flip, but I think this is an 1893. I think it's even older than that. It's very worn. We've got Queen Victoria on the obverse. I'll throw this one under the microscope. We'll just take a closer look and we'll confirm if this is an 1893. So there it is under the microscope, and I think you'll see that last digit is a 3. I'm holding it in a particular way to stop the glare on the flip. We'll see if I let it go, it might want to just glare up where we want to look at it. And but I think it's pretty clear that last digit is actually a 3. You can see how it's kind of got a ball at the top and the bottom. It's not connected at the top like the 9 would be, the 9 beside it. Pretty circulated, so they're pretty smushed in, but I think it's safe to say that's an 1893, and that is an exceptionally old coin. That is really, really awesome. As for the dimes, there's a lot of oldies in here too. The oldest dime being 1908. We got 1913, 1915, 1919. We got a few 1929s. That's crazy. And then into the 30s, 31, 36. That's a last year King George V. And then the 37, that's a first year King George VI. But we got a stack of those 37s, and it gets higher when we get to 38, and even higher still when we get to 39. There might be about 10 of them there. That's just crazy. I rarely see these dimes in the 30s. Even in junk silver purchases, they're just not as common to find. Then we get into the 40s, 40, 41, 42. There's a loose 46. That's a 47 maple leaf. I'll just pull that one up because we'll take a look at the maple leaf on the date here. You can see that little maple leaf symbol. That's just telling us that this was minted in 1948. When this was minted, India had already gained its independence, and they were waiting for new dies from the Royal Mint in England. The old die still said Et ind Imp and Emperor of India. And so they didn't want to print new coins or mint new coins with a 1948 date on them when India already had its independence. And so they just added that maple leaf to indicate it was minted in the later year. And as soon as the 48 dies were in, they were able to start minting them with the proper date without the inscription and Emperor of India on the back. And just picking up from there, there's a 1949 that's loose, and then into the 50s, 50, 51, 52, 54, 56, and a 59 that looks like it's Seen better days, it's a little bit bent. 1960, 63, a loose 64, a couple 65s, and a few 1967s. And the 1967s, of course, this is a bit of a transition year in Canadian coinage. They changed the purity from 80% to 50% part way through the year. They did this also with the quarters. But the specifications are the same. They weigh the same, they are the same diameter, they look the same. And so there's no real easy way to tell the difference between the 50 and the 80%. So most dealers just treat this, they just split the difference and they treat them as 65% if they're selling them for their bullion values. So that's really cool, but we got a few of those and that's a pretty nice one there. Like I said, most of these are pretty circulated, but these were pocket change. So these were what Tristan's father would have found in change and threw in the bucket. And this exercise of putting them in the flips was really sort of a one-time family event to try to organize the collection. After that day, I think he just went back to throwing them in the bucket. So in any case, that is really, really cool. I'll get these out of the way. First, I guess I'll look to see if there are any varieties that we might look for in dimes. There aren't too many varieties in the older dimes and quarters, but I'll grab my handy Charlton catalog and be right back. I've got the 1908 dime under the scope here. This is actually a better date. It's minted just at 776,000, so under a million minted. And there is a variety. There is an 8/8 over date, like a re-engraved date. I've got a picture of it here in the Charlton catalog. So you would just see that little bit of a extra curve there above the top left of the 8. And so we're not going to see that on this coin. It's almost impossible to tell if this is it. This one is so circulated. A lot of that detail is missing. So, but a 1908 is a crazy old coin, old dime to have, and this one's pretty awesome. So we may not know if it's the rarer variety, but an over 110-year-old coin is crazy cool. I've pulled up the 1913 dime here because there is actually a really hard to come by, pretty valuable variety. It's the broadleaf variety. And no, this is not it. This is the regular variety here. The broadleaf, this set of 3 leaves, for example, would really appear to be one large leaf, still kind of in this general shape, but not separated out here, and it comes almost right to the rim. That one, even in a VG condition, is a couple of $100, maybe even more than that. This is the common variety, and it's worth probably about $6 in the condition that it's in. So still a nice coin for the collection. It's a 1913, but that's one that you'd want to look for if you're fortunate enough to come across any of these older dimes. There are some varieties you want to check out, and the Charlton catalog is a great place to look those things up. You'll see illustrations and pictures to show you exactly what to look for. We've actually been doing really well here with these early ones with some of the more key dates. So 1915 is actually very low mintage. It's actually just 688,057. In a VG8, this would be about a $12 coin. So most of these dimes would be really just worth their metal content, their bullion value. This is not in a VG8 though, because you can see it's got some significant wear. It's actually bent a little bit, and if I flip it over, you'll see there's some damage on this side as well from whatever caused that stress. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but it's still a low mintage coin that I'm happy to add to my collection for sure. 1915. We got a couple 1936s that we can look at. They're both in pretty circulated condition, but there are a couple of varieties that we can look for. One is exceptionally rare, and the other maybe not quite that rare. I'm not sure if we'll be able to see it in this kind of condition, but many of you are probably familiar with the 1936 dot penny. It's probably one of the most famous rare Canadian coins. I think there's only a few that are known to have survived, and the dot below the ribbon was denoting that this was minted in 1937. So again, it was a situation where they were in desperate need of coins, but they didn't have the new dies yet, and the monarch had changed from George V to George VI. So they needed new coins. There are only 5 1936 dots that have survived. We're going to take a look and see if there might be 6, if we're lucky enough to have one here. And then we're going to look for another variety that might be a little bit easier to obtain. So I'm going to throw this under the scope. And what we're looking for here is actually a little dot right here. We would see that, and this is not the 1936 dot. We'll check the other one in a moment, but the other variety is the 1936 bar. And the bar is a little design element we might see between these parts of the ribbon here. I can see a couple of little dots. I don't know that that's the bar. We might not even see it in a coin in this condition. That one is more valuable and it's more attainable. And something to note is that Edgar, that's Tristan's dad, was not the kind of collector that was scoping coins like we're doing right now. He wasn't really interested in the finer things. He might not have known about some of the rare varieties. He certainly wasn't scoping coins. He was probably looking at dates, and if it was old or interesting, he was throwing it in the jar. So for the most part, what we're looking at here is, I guess, an unsearched collection. There may be some interesting varieties, and I feel like Tristan is sort of watching and kind of cheering us on here, hoping that we might find something really cool and unusual. This doesn't look to be that coin, but you never know. We'll grab the other 1936, throw that under the scope. And I don't see a dot, and I don't see a bar either. But we got a couple 1936 to add to the collection, and I can't complain about that at all. Wow. We've got these two stacks here, the 1938 and 1939. These would trade pretty much at their melt value, so there's not significant numismatic value necessarily in these dates, except in the higher grades, like in these circulated condition. That's what we're looking at. But there are a couple of interesting varieties. There are some re-engraved dates, so they would really appear as doubling on the dates. And again, in this condition, I don't know if we would even be able to see it. When they're in a mint state, you can see it, but we'll look anyway. You just never know. So we'll start with these 38s. And here's an image from Coins in Canada website. This is a 1939. That's that re-engraved date, and you can see that doubling along sort of really the bottom edge of the date. That's what we'd be looking for. It's going to be tough to find it in a really circulated coin though, but we'll do our best. There's that first 38. I'm not really seeing any signs of doubling, but we're going to check every single one of them to see if we get that. What it might appear like with these coins in this kind of wear would be extra thickness. Not really seeing that. Just maybe some damage on the date there. 38. These all look pretty standard to me so far. Again, it's going to be hard to tell. There's a little something underneath that 9 maybe. I can't really see, but this might just be damage on the date. It's so hard to tell in this condition, the age of these coins, and they've passed through many hands. That looks like a normal one too. And this guy is pretty trashy. It'd be hard to tell, but I think these are all normal. We'll take a look at the 39s next. There's the first one, pretty damaged date. I mean, it might be unlikely that we find one of these that's got the double date, but I mean, this is why we collect, and you just never know when you're looking through old coins like this what you're going to find. Sometimes you luck out and you find the unlikely thing. And that's what makes the hobby lots of fun. 1939, as advertised. So far, they all look to be normal 1939s. I have to say, it's just crazy cool that we've got so many 1939s to look through. This one here looks like it might be a candidate. Just look at how low those other digits are relative to the 1. It's hard to say. We'll just take a peek and see if any of these other ones are just like that. I mean, definitely that one is a little bit higher than the other digits, but not nearly as much as this one, I don't think. It's so hard to tell. Now I've lost track. I think I lost track of the one I was looking at. I think they just might all be normal. Let me know in the comments what you think. I mean, it's so hard in this condition to tell. I might have to take another look at them, but again, we've got some pretty old coins with George VI. Pretty circulated, not a lot of detail, but really old and cool. Now, I mentioned there were some foreign coins that weren't Canadian dimes in that tin. There were actually 9 dimes or 10 cents from the Netherlands. These are all from 1944. I've got one of them up on the screen here. Beautiful coin, 10 cents, 1944. So this is during World War II. All of this silver coinage for the Netherlands was actually minted in the United States during the war, 43, 44, and I think 45. And you'll see that it sports a P mint mark. This one here, all of them are actually P. That's for Philadelphia because it was minted in the States. They actually minted these in Denver and in San Francisco. Most of the Denver minted 1944s have been remelted, so they weren't maybe issued at all. It's possible there might be some surviving, but the P and the S are both fairly common. These ones all happen to be S mint marks. I'll flip this coin over so you can see this is not Victoria, this is not Elizabeth, this is Wilhelmina, Queen in the Netherlands. And all of these coins are actually in pretty nice condition, save for the fact that they've got some pretty significant toning or tarnishing on them, but lots of great detail. And then the other one here looks a lot like a Canadian dime, but this is a 6 pence from Great Britain. Look at that, 1887. We'll flip it over. You'll see that's a very different portrait of Queen Victoria than we would see on Canadian coinage. That's a British 6 pence. I'm going to pull the information up on this one so we can see what this one is all about. Here it is on Numista. It is sterling silver. If we scroll down to the 1887, it's minted at $3,675,000. If this was in a fine, it would be worth about $11, and of course, more if it's uncirculated. This one is not quite that good at all because most of the design on the reverse is gone. That's why it got confused with the Canadian coin. You can barely see the 6. You can't see pence at all. But still, that coin is nearly 140 years old, and you can imagine why Edgar would have found this in change. It was very possible back in the day, and then threw it in the bucket knowing this was something different and special. Very cool. Let's get into these quarters. So we got a ton of silver quarters here and some real oldies. The earliest being a couple 1906s. You can see this one's heavily damaged. It's got some damage on both the obverse and the reverse. This is Edward the 7th. Looks like somebody might have pinched this and spun it or something. I don't know, but there's a very rare variety of the 1906. It's the small crown variety. Both of these are the large crown, and there are some markers on it to tell, but this one here, it's actually in so poor condition, you might have a hard time even seeing that. But when you compare the size of these two crowns, they're the same for sure. We also got this 1909. We got 1910, 12, 14, 17, 18, 19, several of those. 1915 would be the key date in the Edward the 7th quarters. We didn't get one of those. We got some in the 20s, the 1920 and the 28. The 1927 would be the key date in those years. We didn't get that either. And then a whole whack in the 30s. We got 30, 31, 32, 34. I think that's 33, sorry. 34, 36, a whole bunch of 37s, a whole bunch of 38s, a whole bunch of 39s, into the 40s. And of course, these are all now into King George the 6th. We got 42, 47, 48, and then into the 50s and 60s. There's 52, 58, 60, 62, 63, some 67s, really lovely one in here, and a really nice 1968 50% silver, beautiful coin. Tons of stuff. There are fewer varieties to find in the quarters, the 1906 being the one exception. And really that's it. Although there is one we actually can look for, and it's the same as we looked at in the dimes. It's the 1936 dot or bar. I'll throw this under the scope. We'll see. Did we get lucky this time? There's our 36. I had to do a little bit of a double take because there is something there, it appears. But when I took it under the loop, it is clearly just a tiny speck of damage. And I pulled up on Coins in Canada where the dot appears here and it's highlighted. It's actually bigger and rounder. It's a little further over this denticle here, and it's a little further down than the one that we have. You can see it is sort of towards the edge of this, so it needs to be a little further to the right. So that is not the 1936 dot. In the quarters, the 1936 dot is not exceptionally rare or expensive like it is on the dimes or the pennies. It's actually a fairly easily attainable coin. And so it wouldn't have been completely implausible to find it. We just didn't happen to find it in this one. Just a couple of other varieties to note. Some of the 1937s have doubling on the designer's initials, the HP. We had 5 1937s, but they're also circulated and dirty. We can't even really make it out. If it was there, it would just be impossible to see. The other variety of note is on the 1947. There is a version with a dot after the date. And we had 2 1947s, but neither of them was the dot. So I know earlier I said I thought we might get into the dollars and the 50-cent pieces. We spent so much time on the quarters and the dimes, really looking in some detail. I don't think we're going to have enough time right now. This video is already getting long. There's so many other things here to go through. We're just going to have to break it down and present some of these videos one at a time. Like these nickels here and in the album, that's a whole video all on its own. Going through this bucket of pennies, as I said, is probably one on its own. In here, there are rolls of commemorative quarters, and I think we might just do a commemorative quarter hunt for that, and then some odds and ends to go through, and even some paper money I didn't mention, so with some oldies in here which look really, really cool. And of course I almost forgot that quarter that looks like it took a bullet. That is a 1942. So I mean, I don't know what happened to that, but wow, it definitely is a bit misshapen. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to store this. It's not going to easily go in a flip, and it's not going to easily go in a tube. So this one's going to have to get put somewhere special, I guess. In any case, I want to say a big shout out to Tristan. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. It has been lots of fun going through this part of your dad's collection, and I am so looking forward to getting through the rest of it. I hope that you've enjoyed the video, and you watching at home too. It was a real treat going through some really, really old, cool silver dimes, quarters, and some odds and ends too. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned in the future. We'll have more videos while I go through the rest of this collection. There's tons more good stuff to come. So thank you so much for watching. I always appreciate it. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, CAD Roll Hunter, hit that notification bell, subscribe to the channel. That way you'll know when my new videos are coming out. I have videos coming out all the time. Sometimes it's coin roll hunting, sometimes it's collections and purchases, and there's more of this collection to come. So thank you so much. We'll see you again next time. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.